Welcome back to Unquiet You. Today we are going to talk about the depth of my ego and why I believe we have to kill our ego in order to really grow and learn. I always thought that my ego was protecting me. I always thought that my ego was kind of holding it all together. I wanted to look perfect. I wanted to be all the things to all the people. I wanted to seem like I had it all together all the time. I wanted validation. I thought all of these things were what would create success in my life. And what I realized is the day that I killed my ego was the day everything shifted. And the day I realized that I had not been living my authentic truth. I had not been living the shoes that I wanted to be living in. I don't think my ego has always been there. I think my ego has ebbed and flowed throughout life. I think different phases of life, we introduce our ego back in and we let them control things, thinking that it's protecting us. And it's actually something I believe hold us back more than we'll ever know. People often ask me why my marriage, or when my marriage, I knew my marriage was over. And what I have really, really done a lot of work on and figured out is I believe my marriage was over for my husband the day I quit stroking his ego. And I believe the marriage was over for me the day I killed my ego. And what I mean by that is I always wanted, like, me stroking his ego, not that he ever asked me to do that, but I wanted our kids to look a certain way. I wanted our life to look a certain way. I wanted to make sure he had things when he was working late, or I would not work out early mornings because he got up later. So I wanted to have coffee with him. I would adjust my schedule to work with his schedule more. I would take the kids. I would cancel plans if I felt like he was working late or he wanted to do something. I was creating this place for him where I thought I was protecting him, and I thought I was protecting our marriage and our family. And what happened was it was a health related thing for me. I didn't sleep very well. As I was on this health journey a few years back, one of the things that my doctor kept saying is, like, you have to sleep, you have to sleep. And he was a crazy snorer, and to the point where I could not sleep. And this wasn't every once in a while, it was like nightly. He would wake me up multiple times and he would always say, well, I sleep great. And of course he did. Like, but I knew that that was something that it was like, I'm either going to suffer and keep doing this to protect him and, like, to keep his ego in check, or else I'm just going to have to make changes. And so that was kind of the beginning of me not striking his ego anymore and putting my health above his ego, or what I thought was protecting his ego. And so I made a choice to sleep in a different room, or actually he slept in a different room and I slept in our room, but it was because I needed the sleep. It had nothing to do with me not wanting to be with him, but it was me taking a little bit of power back of saying, like, I need this for me. That is kind of when I started noticing how much I protected him and how much I protected our family. And that's kind of when I had to look in the mirror and say, like, why is your ego running you? Like, why is your ego constantly on? Where if we were at an event or I took the kids somewhere and people would say, where's your spouse? Where's your husband? And I was always like, well, he had to work late, or he needed a break. He went fishing. He's helping my father-in-law. I was always coming up with reasons. And because I never wanted anyone to look at me as if I wasn't a good enough wife to have a husband who wanted to do all these things with me and who wanted to show up to the kids' events. And he did when he could. But I was always one who had an excuse for everything. And so the day I decided that I was no longer going to run on ego, and if people had thoughts about me and if that was okay, I remember going to a pool, one of our a local pool, and someone said, well, where is he? Like, it's Friday night. And I just said, he did want to come. And I remember inside my voice being like, oh gosh, they're going to have, like, thoughts of, like, well, maybe he doesn't like me, or maybe he doesn't do this. And I remember thinking, like, I don't care. I don't need to look like a certain way. I don't need for them to have certain thoughts about me. And I just realized at that moment that I was protecting him. He never asked me to protect. He would have said he didn't want to go. He didn't care. But I needed that protection because I needed our family to look like we had it all together. And when I wanted something and I would just make it happen for all of us without saying my needs and really explaining what I truly wanted because my ego was so big that I just could figure it all out. I knew all the answers. I was not going to ask for help. I just was not going to let anyone see a crack. And the day that I let her die and the day that I let her just not run my day was the first day I was like, oh, this is where your accountability comes in. And this is where it's going to get raw. And I worked through a lot of raw emotions. And I thought she had died. I really did. I thought that, like, I pushed her away and told her to go away. And even after my divorce, I would see her creep in. I would see her creep in to protect. I would see her creep in to look to the outside world like things were going great. I use my ego as a huge protector. My ego was always like, I'm very protective of my kids. I'm very protective of their emotions. I'm very protective of what they think about other people. And I realized that this happened a couple weeks ago. A situation happened and I had to get myself back in check. And I was like, is this our ego talking? Are we trying to look a certain way? Are we trying to protect something that we can't protect? And it was just a reminder that she's still there. She still comes. I think our egos, can be good in some ways. I think sometimes we need the little reminders that like we're doing okay. But I think as a whole, the ego is nothing but it's like a facade and it's something that we put on as a shield. It's something that we feel like we need to have validation from the outside world. And when we're able to let that go, a lot of things will shift. One of the ways that I really, really work on letting my ego go whenever she does come up and whenever she wants to show up is the awareness is huge. Like I just like this last situation, I was really aware of what I had done. And I was really like, it made me step back and say, wow, like you have totally stepped out of what you know and gone right back into your ego here because you're afraid of how this is going to be viewed. Humility, I think that I grew up with a mom who had a lot of really great things, great qualities of a lot of things I've taken from it, but humility was not one. She was always right. I learned very quickly that I was always right. I felt like being right all the time protected me and kept me from showing weakness, right? It kept me from admitting I don't know certain things. And especially with my children, I knew I wanted to be a different type of parent, and I knew that I would always apologize when I was wrong. I would admit when I don't know things. But when I'm in my ego zone, I flip that switch on where I know it all and you're not going to tell me any different. I always tell people that especially my kids, I can always tell when you don't know something and you're afraid to admit it because the first words out of their mouth is always, I know. And whenever someone tells me that they know something, they really don't. And they're just running off their ego. They don't want to just come out and say, I don't know it. And that's okay. Um, so every once in a while, I'll check in and I'll see her and I'll see that happening. And I'm like, oh, you think you know it all. You think you know the answers. Here we go. So I always come back from that. Also, I always detach from the outcome. When my ego is in check, she thinks that she's going to control the outcome. She's going to make it happen. She's going to play the story out in her head and it's going to go her way. And that never really works out very well for you. I think it keeps us very guarded. I think it keeps us from the experience as a whole. I think it keeps us from opportunities that could come out of it. So I always ask myself, like, are you trying to create an outcome? Or are you trying to force the outcome to happen the way your ego is telling you that it should? Another thing that I do is I journal about it because I do have thoughts. I'm human. And whenever we're going through situations, thoughts are going to come up and things are going to happen. And when I do know that my ego is working, it's even a better time to write it out because I can release her. I can see her. I can see what she's trying to do. I'm never mad about my ego because I do believe she tries to protect me, but she's trying to protect an old version of me that was unhealed and a version of me that didn't want to face things, where now I am healed and I'm always on a healing journey. But I recognize, like, I want to see those things in me because I want to correct them moving forward. One of the biggest things that your ego does when you kill your ego, the death of our ego, is we admit that we're not perfect. And this is always actually a clear sign to me when I know my ego is running the show, is when I have these thoughts that I am so smart in this, whatever the situation is, that I'm the only one who has the answer. And I am like so perfect um in this situation that I have to be right. And I am not a perfect human. I say this all the time. I will say this forever. I think one of my biggest qualities is that I'm not perfect, and I love that about myself. So whenever my ego is in running the show, that's one of the first things I always recognize, is that I have this switch flipped on that thinks I'm perfect and that I'm going to prove to whoever the situation is, whoever's in front of me, that I'm perfect and that I'm right and that I know all of the things. So one of the things I work with my clients on, because most people, when they come to me, they have some sort of ego. We tell our story and our ego is like, but look how we survived and we're thriving and we're doing all the things. But most people have never really done the work to overcome these things. We just put on the mask. Our ego's running the show. We look like to the outside world, we have it all together. And then we wonder why we can't move forward, why things aren't progressing, it's the same story, right? Like, you jump from relationship to relationship because it's the same story. You're showing up with the same mask on. Your ego is putting on a great front and it's super fun in the beginning and you're all these things, but then the real you is like under there, and the real you is like, what are we doing? We want to come out. This is why you see so many people jump from relationship to relationship, because they don't want to do the work inside of themselves, because they would rather their ego run it, because the ego can't ever be wrong. Is how we kind of tell ourselves that. And I think that it goes back to, there's a lot of things people will say about an ego, whether it's real or not. For me, I've given ego a name. Like, I allow that version of me to be called my ego, because I do know it's a different personality. I know that it's a personality that was created from my past out of protection. It also is what puts me in flight or fight mode. When my ego is running the show, I am always in fight or flight mode, whatever the situation is. And for me, I'm a fighter naturally when I'm in that state. And I don't like that version of me. Like, I've outgrown her. I don't want to be her anymore. And so I always have my clients, we do a check-in to see where our flight or fight node is, um, to know where our ego is and how to let that go. So today I challenge everyone to really, really do the work and see if your ego is running the show. See if you have some of these perfectionisms. See if you are a person that tends to say you're right about everything. Try to control the outcome. You want other people on the outside to think that you're perfect. And I think too, we stroke other people's egos. I think it's very natural, especially for women, to do this because we're protectors and we want to make other people happy by nature. So I would check in with that, because I believe letting go of my ego is what created the unstoppable side of me that I'm in now. I believe, like, when I finally, like, let her go and said she's done in my marriage, that is when all the doors opened up for me. And it wasn't because I became a different person. It was because I just took the mask off. And I realized that over the years, I don't know when the mask came on. I think I know for the most part, but it just slowly started coming on and it was to the point where I was having to put the mask on every single day. So I think in the beginning, sometimes we put the mask on in front of certain people or in certain situations. But if we don't get it in check, that mask has to go on every single day for us to keep going and for us to feel like we're making progress. When it's really when we take the mask off and we do the hard work and we do the looking in the mirror and seeing what we want, uh, being okay with other people not wanting that and being okay with not being perfect, that's where our true power lies. So that's my challenge for you, is to take a deep dive and to see if your ego's running the show. And if it is, those are some steps that you can take to kind of look at it and see what you want, see what you don't want. And I promise you, when you decide to take the mask off and kill your ego, everything's going to change. So thanks for listening.
Thanks for being here and for choosing to be a little louder, a little braver, and a whole lot more you. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love it if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep tuning in to the fire inside. Stay unquiet.